Hello team players, and welcome to my Awakened Animal Ancestry video. If you want to play as any type of animal, this is the ancestry for you. But keep in mind that this ancestry is rare, so you are going to need your GM's permission to take this ancestry. However, I think most GMs are going to allow this ancestry because, honestly, I don't think any of the feats in this ancestry are particularly broken. Personally, I think the only reason that this ancestry is rare is because an awakened animal would be rare lore-wise. The only feats that could be considered rare in this entire ancestry are the flight feats. And number one, those require the flying animal heritage. And number two, the fact is, I've always thought that level 17 was way too high of a level just for flights. Personally, I think full flight at level 9 isn't broken at all. At level 9, there are plenty of monsters that can still hit you even if you're flying. Sure, flying at level 1 or even level 5 would be broken. Broken as heck in Pathfinder 2e. But flying at level 9, I don't think that's broken at all. But let's talk mechanics, because that's what we're here for. As an awakened animal, you get to choose your size, and your size determines your ancestry hit points. Obviously, you're going to choose a size that's appropriate for the animal that you are. But if you're tiny or small, you get 6 ancestry hit points. If you're medium, you get 8. If you're large, you get 10. Your speed is determined by your heritage, which I'll get to in a little bit here. And the only language that awakened animals get automatically is Common. But you do get extra languages based on your intelligence modifier, as normal for ancestries. Awakened animals get a boost to Constitution and Wisdom, as well as a free boost, obviously, and an ability flaw in Intelligence, meaning they do not make good witches, or wizards, or any other intelligence-based class. However, they do make good wisdom-based classes, as well as martials. All awakened animals also get 2 abilities. The awakened form ability, allowing them to stand on 2 legs, even if they would normally be on 4 legs, and allowing them to hold items in limbs that would normally be considered their legs. This allows you to use items normally, even if you're something like a bear that wouldn't have arms normally. However, even if you're something like an octopus that has multiple arms, mechanically, you are still a humanoid with 2 arms, which essentially means even if you're something like an octopus, you can't wield 8 weapons, and you can't grapple 8 people at once. You also gain the Awakened Mind ability. Even though you are no longer considered an animal, you can still ask questions of, receive answers from, and use diplomacy on animals of your kind. Also, by remembering your instincts, you can allow yourself to be affected by spells and other effects as if you were an animal. In other words, if a buff spell only works on animals, you can have it affect you. But if a detrimental effect only works on animals, you can just say no to that. I do think that this could allow for some very interesting team combos. For example, an animal druid could definitely cast some spells on both you and their animal companion, making this pretty great, honestly. Before we get started with heritages, I do want to talk about animal unarmed attacks, because every single heritage in this ancestry gets 1 animal unarmed attack of your choice. Now I have them on screen, but the best one by far is the tail, because that has the trip trait, meaning you can get an item bonus if you want to trip people. The rest of them just have agile and finesse mainly, which effectively means less of a multiple attack penalty, and you can use dex rather than strength. So take a look at these and just remember that you can pick any of these no matter what heritage you end up picking. Our first heritage for the awakened animal is the climbing animal. These, of course, are animals that are good at climbing. So you might be something like a chimpanzee or otter, or you might be a quick climber with like a bear, raccoon, or sloth. You have a land and climb speed of 20 feet. And typical unarmed attacks for you are claws, fists, or jaws. And obviously, if you're something like a chimpanzee, you could take the tail unarmed attack here, which I consider to be the best one because it's the only one that has a athletics action trait on it. Next, we've got the flying animal. You can't fly, but you can still slow your descent. So you take no fall damage regardless of how far you fall. You have a land speed of 20 feet, and typical unarmed attacks for you are claws, jaws, beak, talon, or wing. Most people that take this heritage are going to take the take flight first level ancestry feat, which I'll talk about later in this video. Next, we've got the running animal. This is your cheetahs, iguanas, and other fast animals. Most of the time, these are animals that can run on all fours very fast. However, you might also be something like a kangaroo that runs on 2 legs. You have a land speed of 30 feet, and typical unarmed attacks for you are jaws, claws, or tail. If you want to be faster than the awakened animal, this is the heritage you want to take. With the swimming animal, you might be a creature that spends a lot of time in the water, like a alligator, seal, or whale, or you might be something like a fish that needs to spend all of its time in the water. If you're an aquatic animal like a fish, that means you gain the aquatic trait and have a swim speed of 30 feet. However, because you have the aquatic trait, you cannot breathe air, but you do get to breathe water. In addition, your slashing and bludgeoning unarmed attacks do not take the -2 penalty for being underwater. If you're an animal like an alligator or a seal that can spend time outside of water, then you can hold your breath underwater for 10 minutes before needing air. You have a swim speed of 20 feet, and if you can move on land, you also have a land speed of 20. Unfortunately, this one is probably the worst one here. It doesn't matter which animal you pick. You are severely limited on what you can do because you need water. If you're in a campaign that's near water a lot or is in water a lot, then this can be a great heritage. However, most campaigns are not going to work like that, which means that this one is probably one you want to avoid. There is one feat later on that makes being aquatic a tiny bit better, but yeah, for most campaigns, you're not going to want to pick this one up. We have a lot of level 1 ancestry feats to talk about here. Let's start with Awakened Animal Lore. This is pretty much your standard lore feat that all ancestries get. You become trained in Arcana and Nature, and you gain additional lore for Awakened Animal Lore. Pretty basic here. Next, we've got Awakened Magic, which allows you to pick any primal cantrip and cast it as an innate spell, just like any other cantrip. This is just a fantastic feat here. The primal list is so versatile, and you can pick any primal cantrip. It can be something like Ignition or Electric Arc, or if you're using pre-remastered spells, you can even pick something like Healing Plaster. There's a lot you can do with this feat, and it's pretty great. And remember, you can cast it even if you're not a spellcaster, which means fighters and monks and other martials can take advantage of this too. This is one I would definitely consider. Next we have Fascinated by Society. You become trained in Society. In addition, you basically gain the Dubious Knowledge skill feat, except only for Society checks. This also works for Decipher Writing, but again, only for Society checks. Which means if you fail on a Recall Knowledge using Society, you effectively get some true knowledge and some false knowledge. but you don't know which is which. This is really more of a flavor feat, because if you really wanted to have dubious knowledge, you could just take it as a skill feat. And it would apply to all recall knowledge checks, not just society. I don't consider this feat to be very good mechanics-wise. For land legs, you need to be the swimming animal heritage, and you need to have chosen aquatic. You gain a land speed of 20 feet and can breathe air for 10 minutes. This effectively turns an aquatic animal into a water-dwelling animal. Which again, even that's not that great, unless you're near water a lot. But this does allow for some interesting characters, especially if you're on a ship. Because you can be something like a dolphin and still be on the ship some of the time. So, I can understand why they gave this feat to aquatic animals, but again, you're gonna have to be near water either way. With Learn by Watching, you become trained in your choice of crafting, medicine, or performance. In addition, when you follow the experts during exploration mode, you can basically become trained in any untrained skill instead of just adding your level alone. This effectively means you can be trained in any skill as long as at least one member of your party is at least an expert in that skill. But only during exploration mode. Effectively, whatever you need to do outside of combat, as long as somebody is at least an expert in that skill, you can be trained in it. Which honestly is pretty awesome. You don't even need to be a rogue to be trained in every skill now. Effectively. If you have the right skill spread, of course. Of course, this is only out of combat, but it's still a pretty fantastic feat here. With natural senses, you choose one of the following senses that your animal type has. Dark vision, echolocation 10 feet, low light vision, imprecise scent 30 feet, or tremor sense imprecise 30 feet. Echolocation allows you to use hearing as a precise sense within range. Which of course is only 10 feet, but that's still a pretty fantastic sense to have. But of course, if your animal doesn't typically have that sense, then you can't gain it with this feat. You can also pick this up multiple times if your animal has more than one of these senses. This can be really good because remember that awakened animals don't automatically get a special type of sense. Which means taking this feat could be extremely beneficial. They essentially have the same vision as humans, but if your animal has dark vision, then this could be one to pick up. And echolocation, even if it's only 10 feet, can be extremely helpful. This is another great one. The only requirement for sea legs is that you do not have a swim speed. You gain a swim speed of 10 feet, and you can breathe underwater for 5 minutes. Unfortunately, this is another situational one. For most campaigns, you're not going to be near water anywhere near enough for this feat to be worth it. But if you are, and you're not wanting to be a swimming animal, then this feat can be great. Now we finally get to that take flight feat I mentioned earlier. This one requires the flying animal heritage. For one action, once per round you can fly. If you don't have a normal fly speed, you gain a fly speed of 15 feet. However, if you do not end your movement on solid ground, you fall. If an enemy is flying above you, this won't help you very much. However, if an enemy is like up on a platform and you want to melee attack them, this is fantastic. Because you can just fly up there and then melee attack them. And you will need to take this if you want full flight later at level 9. Next we've got Tooth and Claw, which just gives you a second unarmed attack appropriate to your animal. That's it. If you want 2 unarmed attacks, this is the feat you want to take. And finally, for level 1, we have You're So Cute. You become trained in performance and gain the Impressive Performance skill feat. In addition, when you are performing for humanoids, you get a +1 bonus to performance checks to make an impression. This is more of an out-of-combat feat, but it is fantastic for Awakened Animal Bards. +1 bonus to perform for humanoids is pretty darn good, even if it's just for making an impression. And this is going to apply pretty much all the time you're wanting to make an impression, because when are you going to run into someone you want to make an impression against that isn't humanoid? I mean, really. I guess if you run into a dragon you want to make an impression on, but I mean, come on. This is going to apply pretty much all the time. At level 5, I'm going to start with Fierce Grasp. For one action, if you have an opponent grabbed or restrained, you can give them a -2 penalty on their next escape check, and you can gain a +1 bonus to AC against their attacks, for as long as you have them grabbed. This does require that you be a climbing animal, but this just makes grappling even better, as you're making them off guard, making them easier to hit for you and your allies. You're making it harder for them to hit you and harder for them to escape from you. It is an action, so that means you're not going to be able to attack for that action, but it's still worth it. At least I think so. Late Awakener is actually a pretty interesting feat here. If you're an awakened animal and you pick a versatile heritage, you're still going to have to pick an animal because that determines your speed. But you have to take this feat to gain the other mechanical benefits of the heritage. That includes the unarmed attacks, and this also allows you to pick feats from the Awakened Animal heritage that require a specific Awakened Animal heritage. This is the last feat I covered, which requires the Climbing Animal heritage. This just makes the Awakened Animal Ancestry more versatile, which helps a lot. Natural Ambassador allows you to use your Awakened Mind ability on all animals, not just those of your kind. In addition, you gain a +1 bonus to diplomacy checks when you do so, or a +2 if it's an animal of your kind. This is another great roleplay feat here, because you can talk to any animal. It doesn't matter what type it is. In fact, you can even talk with things like animal companions with this feat, which is just straight up awesome. If you're in a roleplay campaign, this is a fantastic feat to take. Scurry is a fantastic feat for rogues, but it does require that you are tiny size. When you roll initiative, you can use a free action to stride. However, you must end your movement in a square that you could take cover from at least one enemy you can see. And you can't take this action if it's impossible for you to do so. You can use this feat with other movement types if you have them. Remember that this feat requires that you be tiny size, which means that unless you are alone and in a field, you will always have a place to take cover. You could take cover behind a wall or a log, or even better, even if you're in something like a straight field, but you're not alone, you can take cover behind your allies because you're tiny. There are very few situations where you will not be able to use this feat, and you do it as part of your initiative, which means as long as you can use this feat, you will always be able to hide on your first turn. Pretty much no matter what. And it's not even a once per day thing. It's straight up, you roll initiative, you can use this feat. Strong of Wing requires Take Flight, but it makes Take Flight even better. The speed you gain from Take Flight increases to 25 feet, effectively allowing you to fly farther, but with the same limitations as Take Flight. But you will need this feat as well to get the full flight at level 9. So, if you're a flying animal heritage, you may want to take this as well. In order to take Urban Jungle, you must take Fascinated by Society, and you must be an expert in either Society or Survival. While you're in urban areas, you can track at full speed, and you can use either Society or Survival to track. Again, this is an out of combat feat, but this can be good for Rangers, as being able to track in urban areas with Society rather than Survival is actually okay. Unfortunately, Awakened animals do get a minus to intelligence, which means it may be beneficial to use Society, which means you wouldn't need this feat. However, being able to track at full speed at level 5 is actually pretty good. But overall, unless you're using the optional rule where you can pick 2 free boosts rather than the ability boost and flaw, then you're probably better off picking something else here in addition to Fascinated by Society. And our last level 5 ancestry feat is going to be Wild Stride. You must have at least 1 free hand to use this feat. However, for 2 actions, you stride twice. You gain a 5-foot status bonus to your speed for this movement. Or if you have 2 hands free, it's plus 10 bonus to your speed. The best part about this feat is it doesn't require any particular heritage. You would think this would require the running animal heritage, but it doesn't. It just requires that you have 1 free hand, which means this is great for spellcasters, especially bards, as they can stride twice, get away from enemies, and still use 1 action, still have 1 action left. This also works well for witches, as both of those classes have 1 action spells they can use. Which means this is great for getting away from enemies for them. This is also great for monks, any martial that has 1 free hand, at least. Heck, it's even good for unarmed fighters, classes that need both hands. So it's really good for some builds, but not great for others. We only got 2 feats for level 9, but the first is Animal Summoner, which requires Awakened Magic. You gain Summon an Animal as an innate spell. This can be cast once per day, but more importantly, it's heightened to half your level rounded up. This feat is just amazing because it's an innate spell that ranks up to what it would normally be, even if you're not a spellcaster, which means you can summon bigger and bigger animals as you level up, which makes this feat better and better as you level up. And then we've got Full Flight, which is exactly what it sounds like. You gain the flight from Strong of Wing at all times, not just once for 1 action. And again, you do need the other 2 feats for this. So you're essentially giving up 3 ancestry feats for full flight, which is good, but not great. Now, of course, you can take Ancestral Paragon to get the first one in addition to another feat, but still. The point is, it's not near as broken as some people may think. For level 13, we're going to start with Awaken Others. You learn the Awakened Animal Ritual. You use your own nature to supplement the ritual, so it costs 1/10 of what it would normally cost. Also, you can never critically fail on this ritual. I'm not really sure how this feat could be useful, but I guess if you want to make an animal an NPC, this is how you would do it. Unfortunately, you cannot awaken your animal companion and keep it as an animal companion. Which means that this isn't a great feat here, in my opinion. I don't know. You guys can let me know how you would use this feat if you were playing one. With the digger feat, you must be a running or climbing animal. But you gain a burrow speed of 15 feet. Burrowing can be useful for rogues, especially since you can use it to sneak up on people. They can't see you because they're underground. Unless, of course, they have a burrow speed as well. But even then, I guess if the enemy has tremor sense, then they can find you. But for most creatures, if you burrow, they're not going to find you. They don't know where you're going to pop up. And finally, for level 13, we have Sharpened Senses. Once per round, you can seek as a free action. In addition, if you have a sense from natural senses and you use that, you also gain a +2 bonus on the check. This is fantastic for combat if you need to find somebody who's hiding, as this is just a free seek. Period. There's no downside to this. It is fantastic. Again, it's a little situational because not all enemies are going to try to hide from you. Alright, we're finally to level 17 feats, and first we've got Awakened Stride, which requires Wild Stride. When you Wild Stride, you can stride 3 times, and you're concealed during the movement. Another fantastic feat for spellcasters here, as this just makes Wild Stride even better. As you're striding 3 times, so you can get even further away from enemies, and you're concealed during the movement, which means even if they have something like Reactive Strike, they still might miss you because of that concealment, which is just great. With Fearsome Form, you can cast Mask of Terror as a Primal Innate spell once per day. But you can only target yourself with this, and you always appear as a monstrous form of yourself. Unfortunately, you cannot cast this on anyone else. However, this is good for giving enemies a reason not to attack you if you're a spellcaster, or punishing them for attacking you if you're something like a tank. Overall, this is a great feat for pretty much any character. This one I do recommend, especially since it's a 7th rank spell, which is actually worth a level 17 Ancestry feat. And our final feat for this Ancestry is True Senses. This feat does require natural senses. This allows you to non-magically gain the effects of a 6th rank True Sight for 10 minutes. This applies to any precise sense you possess. That means if you pick Dark Vision or Low Light Vision or even Echolocation, it applies to any of those. And it even applies to your normal senses. A lot of you are going to say that this is broken, but to be honest, it's only a once per day thing, whereas the others you can do multiple times, or just have forever. So, I think that makes this balanced. Besides, honestly, even at level 17, you're not going to need this too much. But it is nice to have. And that's the Awakened Animal done. So, let me know in the comments what you think of the Awakened Animal, or if I missed anything. But if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and do all that other YouTube stuff. In addition, if you want my videos early, you can become a member of this channel or join me on my Patreon page. You probably want to join me on my Patreon page because there you'll get my videos early and without ads. My next video will be on all the new spells from Howl the Wild, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But if you guys are more interested in the Centaur Ancestry, I got a video for that right here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, teamwork is vital. It helps us solve problems.